Second thing I want to say is I keep hearing people act like the world's going to come to an end if we finally do what Al Gore's been trying to get us to do for 11 years and pass legislation designed to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. All I can tell you is this. Look at the numbers. I don't think you think I would try to sell you an economic bill of goods. We had 22.7 million jobs in our 8 years. They had 2.5 million in the last 8 years. The reason they had this is before the economic collapse. Before the economic collapse. Why? Because all the economic growth was in housing, finance, and consumer spending. A bunch of you going broke with your credit cards. We're saving money again now. You can't run a big economy like ours unless every 5 to 8 years you got a source of new jobs. The most obvious source of new jobs is changing the way we produce and consume energy. If we made a serious commitment to energy independence through clean energy and energy efficiency, it would mobilize millions and millions and millions of jobs. And I don't want to bore you with all the details, but I do this work now all around the world. We just certified 16 projects in 10 cities on 5 continents that are residential, commercial, and mixed use that will produce no greenhouse gas emissions. They're carbon neutral 100%. My presidential library is the only top-rated LEED building by the U.S. Green Building Council in the entire federal system. Now, it's going to take us 10 years to pay that off. But you get 20 years to pay off a coal-fired power plant. We just helped do the plan to redo the Empire State Building, probably the most iconic building in New York City. It was built in the teeth of the Depression in 1931. We are going to create hundreds and hundreds of jobs, reduce their greenhouse gas emissions 38%, reduce their utility bill $4.5 million a year, has the equivalent effect of taking 19,000 cars off the road. Takes 7.5 years to pay off. Fine. After that, you save $4.5 million a year forever. You get 20 years to pay for a coal-fired power plant. I'm telling you, all these people that tell you this stuff is not economical are assuming that we will never finance clean energy and energy conservation the same way we finance the old way of doing things. If we do it, you'll have more jobs than you can say grace over. You like the Cash for Clunkers program? We ought to have a Cash for Electric Cars program just like it, and pretty soon America would not need anything from the Middle East except peace and honor and decency and the absence of terrorism. I want to say about education is this, because you guys know more about it than I do. Certainly the states have more to do with it than the federal government, but I like Arne Duncan, the U.S. Education Secretary. I think what he's trying to do and having more charter schools and more accountability over them is a good thing. When Al Gore and I campaigned on the charter school movement in 1992, there was exactly one charter school in the whole country. And I think that Minnesota, where it was, and Arkansas were the only 2 states that authorized them. Now it's sweeping the country, and they're working. In New York City, we have some charter schools where there are 30 and 40 applicants for every person who can be admitted. I think it's important to recognize that we have to change the delivery system for higher education. In our second term, Al and I got the biggest increase for college aid since the GI Bill. That's the good news. The bad news, all the financial benefits to the students were gone in 5 years because of inflation and cost. So we got to do something else. I think President Obama's right to go to the direct loan program. When the government insured the college loans, for many people when I was president, the students saved, listen to this, $9 billion. They saved $1,300 in repayment costs for every $10,000 they borrowed, and the taxpayers saved $4 billion because the students could pay their loans back. This is not rocket science. There are 17 states now that allow community colleges with high ratings to offer 4-year college credits. We've got to do something to make college affordable to all Americans and accessible to all Americans, and the president's trying to do that. Now, the last thing I want to say is something about the debt. Because a lot of Americans are saying, well, maybe we shouldn't do anything about health care now because we're up to our ears in debt. And they just had to revise the annual deficit figures up, and gosh, we're going to double the debt in the next 8 years. And the Republicans are just harping on this. It almost makes you want to gag. Let me just remind you of the facts here. In the 12 years before Al and I went to the White House, they quadrupled the national debt. And yes, it's true the Democrats had the Congress, but there's another truth, which is the Democratic budgets actually had smaller deficits than the Republican presidents asked for. They quadrupled the debt in 12 years. We gave you 4 balanced budgets and paid $600 billion down on the debt, and if second President Bush had kept our budget line, this country would have been out of debt by next year, or even with the recession, by 2015. Completely. Now, President Obama doesn't like these deficits, and he hated the fact that we had to go borrow the money from other countries to pay for our surplus. That compromises our national security. But it wasn't his idea. He had to deal with the budget that he found and the structure that he found. And he could hardly go around raising taxes in the middle of a severe recession. But these last numbers are nothing more than a reflection of how severe the recession was. The reason the deficit's bigger is because America was in worse shape. The unemployment rate is understated. It doesn't count the people who quit looking for work and are so discouraged they're not in the figures anymore. It doesn't count all the people that are underemployed, part-time employed instead of full-time employed. So what happened is the tax revenues were lower and the unemployment and other expenses like food stamps were higher. That's all that happened. When this economy comes back, and it's coming, then the deficit will drop to what you might call its natural level given the current set of circumstances. Then, but not until then, you should expect the Democrats, beginning with the President and including the Congress, to reassert strong fiscal discipline and take this country back to a balanced budget. But don't you let the Republicans tell you that somehow they're responsible for the mess we're in now. The President's doing the right thing. First, we got to get the economy going, and then we can bring the budget back into balance. That is the right thing to do. Well, I'm not a very good politician anymore. I just say what I think. But I want you to know, I've been waiting for 40 years for this. Ever since I was 22 years old. We now have a natural majority in the country. Their whole program is to make us fail. They don't have an affirmative agenda. Our whole program has to be to succeed. We have to be the how party. We have to say, okay, whatever money we got, here's the most we can do in healthcare. Here's the most we can do in education. Here's the most we can do in a clean energy economy. Here's what we're going to do to make America what it ought to be. To recreate the American dream and make our country a leading force for peace and freedom. It's wonderful for me, because I work all around the world, to see the reaction that people around the world have to America now because of the new president, and I might add the new Secretary of State. They like us out there now. They like us. So, here's what I want to say. Don't get on the defensive. Play offense. Stick with your congressman. Help them do the best they can with health care. Help them do the most they can with clean energy. Help them do the most they can with education. Get this economy on the road again. We will return to fiscal discipline if we stay in. We're the how party. People only hire us when the country's in a world of hurt. But now we have a natural majority. We can keep this going for 30 or 40 years if we stand and deliver. But the worst thing we can do is nothing. So Democrats, go out there and do the right thing, do it in the right way, and you're going to have a great time. Thank you. God bless you.